We're going to get started in about 10 seconds. We're live now. Just going to take a few moments to share it on a couple of social media platforms and get going, and we will rock and roll. Please mute yourselves. That would be a very good thing for humanity. Okay, last cheer, and we are good to go. Good evening, Chaya. Good evening, Baruch. Good evening to all of you on Zoom, to all of you on Facebook. What a beautiful crowd. It is countdown time, baby. We have, what is it, 4 or 5 days, 5 days until 5 days until, let me just mute this, 5 days until we will usher in the holiday of all holidays, Zman Chiruseinu, the day of our freedom. And I'd like to discuss today, what we're going to discuss today is the concept of freedom, how Western society has molested and destroyed the concept of freedom, and what the Torah's view of freedom is, and how it is incredibly inspiring, and how it goes contrary, right? I like being a contrarian, but I'm not really the contrarian. Judaism is not really contrarian. The rest of the world are the contrarians. We are the authentic source of all good, of all holiness, of all beauty. And then the world came along and thought they were smarter than God and smarter than the Torah, so they're the contrarians. We're going to talk about authenticity and what freedom actually means, because it's not only important today as it was 3,000 years ago. I would venture to say that it may even be more important than it was 3,000 years ago. So Pesach, let's start with some basics. Passover starts on Monday night, April 22nd. We are going to celebrate 8 days. We're not going to eat our leaven. We're going to eat matzah. We're going to drink our cups of wine or grape juice, and we're going to lean towards our left side as a sign of freedom and royalty. We're going to eat our bitter herbs to remember the horror and the atrocities of the Egyptians and the suffering that we endured. It's going to be a mixture of a 15-step Seder, obviously, but a mixture of a lot of different spiritual experiences. But yet, the theme of it all, right? Every holiday has its name. When you go in the Amidah prayer in Shul, when we do the Amidah in Shul, on the holiday, each holiday has a title that the sages gave it. So, for example, Sukkot is called Zman Simchaseinu, the time of our joy. Shavuos is called Zman Matan Toraseinu, the day of the giving of the Torah. Pesach, Passover, which is the foundation of all of the holidays. It's the holiday that made us a nation. Without Passover, there's no Shavuos, there's no Sukkot, right? Shavuos was the giving of the Torah 50 days after Sinai. 50 days after the Exodus at Sinai. Sukkot, when we celebrate the holiday of Sukkot, the festival of booths in Tishrei, in September, October, we say the verse says, the Torah says, Ki b'sukkos hashaftis b'nei Yisrael, v'yitzi ha'isam me'eretz Mitzrayim, that I allowed them to dwell in booths when I took them out of Egypt. It's all about Egypt. And so the Exodus of Egypt, Passover, is not just a prime Jewish holiday. It's the foundation of all Jewish holidays. Passover is the birth of our nation. We left Egypt, and that's when we became a nation. God passed over the homes of the Jews, but Passover, the holiday, is the day that made us a nation. Now, it's interesting that out of all the terms, all the titles that this holiday could have had, right? It could have been called the holiday of the Exodus of Egypt. It could have been called the holiday of nation birthing. It could have been the holiday of spending time in the desert. The words of our sages are specific, are precise. And if the holiday is called Zman Cheruseinu, the holiday of our redemption, of our liberty, of our freedom, it's very important to analyze, to have a thorough analysis of what freedom is. Now, you may have heard this, so I apologize if you have, but many of you may have not, and that is, a lot of people think of America, for example, as a place that has freedom from religion. But that's not what the founders had in mind. There was freedom of religion. And that mistake, that one word mistake, is a difference for a Jew. It's the difference between life and death. Because for a Jew, the spirituality that's imbued in Torah, that permeates our lives when internalized, is our life. And when we don't have that, when we free ourselves from religion, it's death. It's not physical death, but it's spiritual death. And spiritual death for a Jew is worse than physical death. If your body dies, it's just physical death. That's temporary. But if your soul dies, that's spiritual death, that's eternal. So when we deprive oxygen from our spiritual side, from our godly soul, it's a stronger form of death. Even if you don't feel it that way, because you're still thrusting and eating and like there's nothing going on. So we have to start with the basis that America's idea, or I shouldn't say many American people have the idea that freedom is not of religion, but it's from religion. And that's a primal mistake that has long-term effects. If you look in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Devarim, Moses is saying goodbye to the Jewish people. The last 37 days of his life is the fifth book of the 5 books of Moses. Deuteronomy is Moses saying goodbye to the Jews. And he says to them, and I quote, this is chapter 4, verse 34 in Deuteronomy. So Moses tells the Jewish people, or has any God ever miraculously come to take for himself a nation from amidst the nation, with challenges, with signs, and with wonders, and with war, and with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm, and with greatly awesome deeds, such as everything that Hashem your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? In other words, there's never been a group of human beings that have had that level of miracle. That there was a nation absorbed in another nation, and God extracts one nation, takes them out with an outstretched arm, with miracles and wonders and war and everything, and God just takes them out. There's an extraction, right? You ever see these TV shows about the CIA and the Mossad? They're always extracting someone from here, from there. This is literal. God took over 2 million people and extracted them out of Egypt. And that's a verse, by the way, the verse that I just read from Deuteronomy is a verse that we say in the Seder on the Pesach night. What does it mean? Right? That God extracted us, a nation from amidst the nation. In 1946, 4 years, just under 4 years before the Rebbe's father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, passed away in January of 1950. So Passover of 1946, the Rebbe, who was not yet the Rebbe because his father-in-law was still alive, presented to the world his first scholarly work. Now, he printed a book already in 1943 called Hayom Yom, which is a daily quote. But all those quotes, that was a compilation of teachings from his father-in-law, from his father-in-law's father, and other Chabad Rebbes. This was the Rebbe's unique handiwork. He made an in-depth analysis, a scholarly, halachic, Torah, Medrash, Talmud, Hasidic, Kabbalistic analysis on the Haggadah Shel Pesach, on the Haggadah that we read on the Pesach night. It's a fascinating, it's a fascinating piece of work. You have to really study it. You can't just read it casually. It's very, very deep and very, very thorough. But what I share with you tonight was printed from the Rebbe's teachings in the 1991 edition, reprint of the 1946 book that the Rebbe authored in 1946. So the Rebbe was born in 1902. So he was 44 years old when he authored this book, and it's incredible. So everything I share with you tonight is from there. And he says when you assess that verse in Deuteronomy, he took you a nation from amidst the nation has a double meaning. The most basic meaning of the verse is that the Jews living in Egypt lived immersed in the Egyptian world because they had no choice. They were slaves, but they had their own culture, their own lifestyle. They had their own language. They wore their own clothing. They lived in their own neighborhood called Goshen. They lived in amidst another nation, but they were still sort of their own group of people. So they were extracted one nation from the other nation because they stood out in their lifestyle as being different than their Egyptian neighbors. But there's a harsher translation as well. And that is that the Jewish people lived amongst another nation, which doesn't really translate as amidst another nation, but under the rule of another nation. Meaning, it's very different, but in Hebrew, both translations are possible, which is why the Rebbe analyzes both, and specifically the second interpretation of that they lived under the duress or under the control or under the pressure of the other nation is really a lesson in independence versus dependence. Because if we to accept that second interpretation, it means even though the Jews lived in Goshen and lived, had their own clothing or their own language, they were very much dependent on the Egyptians, and at a certain point sort of surrender to the fact that they have no independence of their own. Actually, the sages in the Mechilta, in the Medrash, the sages compared the Jews in Egypt. Maybe you've never heard this, but the sages compared the Jews in Egypt to a fetus in its mother's womb. Meaning, on the one hand, the fetus is its own entity. It has a head, it has feet, it has hands, it has other body parts as the fetus develops. On the other hand, there's no independent life. Wherever the mother goes, so goes the baby, right? Whatever the mother eats, such is the sustenance of the baby, which is why mothers are so careful with what they eat and what they drink. There's total subservience, total dependence on mama, even though you're your own person growing in your mother's womb, right? The umbilical cord is still connected. So the Medrash says that the Jews in Egypt, that's sort of what they were like. On the one hand, they were a nation. They still spoke the native language of Hebrew. They still lived in Goshen. Even some of them tried to dress Jewishly, or at least not like Egyptians. On the other hand, they were totally dependent on the Egyptians, so much so that there were many Jews that even joined the idolatries of Egypt. So God now wants to extract the Jews out of such a situation where they're living for hundreds of years under Egyptian control and mental, emotional, spiritual, physical abuse. So yes, they still retain their identity, but what's that identity worth if you're still dependent on the mother's womb? If you're still trying to impress your masters? That's not true independence. You may be physically independent, but your mind and heart is still very much dependent on your masters. Your umbilical cord to Egypt is still very, very much connected. So God needed the Jews to disconnect. So what did he do? He needed to cut the umbilical cord. What did he do? He said, take yourself a lamb and tie it to your bedpost. Take the Egyptian idol and tie it to the front of your house where everyone could see it. Everyone, there's lambs everywhere. And when the Egyptians ask you what's going on, tell them you're going to slaughter these lambs as an offering to God. You're going to eat it, you're going to shecht it, you're going to slaughter it. You're going to take the idol of the Egyptians and make it into an offering to God. That's brazen, that's chutzpah. But that was the first act of defiance that allowed the Jews to eventually make their way into true independence from their tyrant masters, the Egyptians. You have to be able to defy them. Think back, not to compare it because it's not, for multiple reasons you can't really compare it, but think about when they pulled in Berlin in 1991 when the Soviet Union fell and those statues were coming down in Germany, right? Or think about when Saddam's statues started coming down in Iraq, or think about when the first black, the Rosa Parks of the world, right? When they did their act of defiance. Someone needed to be defiant to break the shackles. And so when God said to the Jews, take the lamb and put it at your bedpost as an offering, it was an act of defiance. And then you're going to shecht it. And that's how you could slowly become a truly free person, because it's very easy to convince yourself that you're free. Free from what? If you're talking about freedom from oppression, okay. That's an easy one. Most people in the world, or most people in Western society, are free from an oppressor. And because you get to do whatever you want and you're free, people think that that's true freedom. But is it? How many things do we do in our life because we want to, as Jews, and we do it because we want to impress our non-Jewish neighbors? Or because our non-Jewish neighbors' culture has so permeated our brain that we think that this is what true freedom looks like? How many non-Jewish ideas have permeated the Jewish community because Jews have been surrounded so much by the idolatrous lifestyle that we already forgot what's Jewish and what's not? So much so that what happens is not only are you following the non-Jewish lifestyle, but you walk around saying, as a Jew, I believe. What do you mean, as a Jew? You don't get to make up your own Judaism. God made up Judaism for you. You don't get to make it up for your own benefit. But that's the problem when you're actually not free. You're not free to be who you are at your core, at your essence. Your freedom, you think, is because you're free to be free and do whatever you want, but that's not freedom. Especially if what you're doing is more like a slave that's following whatever the master's telling them, whether they're telling them directly or indirectly. When a Jew has a dilemma between what the Torah says and what the world says, and they choose the world, that's the greatest sign that they're not free. They're an enslaved person. How many times have people walked into the shul and said, Rabbi, oh, if you talk about that topic from Leviticus or that topic from Numbers, it's going to get you into real trouble. Trouble with who? With people? Okay. We're here to study Torah. What would I choose? What would I rather choose? That which makes me get in trouble with God, or that which makes me get in trouble with people? I'd rather get in trouble with people. Of course, I'd rather get in trouble with people than in God. Exactly. And so when we talk about freedom, I think most Americans think that they're really liberty-oriented and they really believe in freedom. But I think when it comes down to it, so much of their life is lived as a slave when they could be living freely if they choose to do what's in sync with their heart, with their soul. And Pesach is the holiday where the Jews were defiant about the idolatrous influence, and they freed themselves as independent, like a baby being born. That's why it's the birth of our nation. We're cutting the umbilical cord. You are free now to truly be free to your core and not be defined, guided, inspired, educated, or miseducated by the society around you. Instead, you allow for God to be your guide. And that's really why we say in the Haggadah on Pesach, it's we used to sing it as kids, but it's a very powerful statement. I have an Haggadah right here in front of me. We say it not too long before we eat the matzah. We say, in each and every generation, a person must see himself as if he or she had personally left Egypt. Right? You have to see yourself as I left Egypt. And you ask yourself, how could I leave Egypt? We left Egypt over 3,000 years ago. That's when we left Pharaoh. We were not under his influence and his servitude anymore. And furthermore, is it true freedom? Because what did we do right after the Exodus? We went to Sinai. What happened at Sinai? It says, you will serve God at that mountain. Tavdun in Hebrew is from the same word as Eved, a servant, a slave. So you're telling me I got free when I left Egypt, and then 5 seconds later you're telling me that, you know what freedom means? You get to serve God at the mountain. Is that really freedom? And a lot of Jews will tell you, no, it's not freedom. Judaism is too restrictive. Judaism is too many rules. Too much structure. I find God on mountaintops. I don't need religion. said every person who never wanted to have a relationship with God. That's always where it starts. I don't need structure. I don't need religion. I can figure out my relationship with God myself. You can't. Because if you're truly seeking to have a relationship with God, and He tells you how He wants you to have a relationship with Him, you can't make up your own new rules. The President of the United States says to you, Bubala, can you get me a pastry with a cup of coffee? 2 sugars, a little bit of milk. You come back an hour later, and instead of a pastry, you bought him French fries, and instead of coffee, you bought him a tea. It's a nice idea. You can have all the excuses under the sun, but you didn't do what he asked you to do, and don't expect the relationship to grow and flourish when you literally struck out on the first time of bringing the right thing. And yet when it comes to Yiddishkeit, every Chacham says, well, God says, but I think, who asked you what you think? But I want to be free. Free of what? Free of outside influences that are trying to make you something that you're not. God is not trying to make you something that you're not. He's educating you, inspiring you to live up to who you are. And He tells you this is how you do it. Right? If you come to a rock, right? And you say to what does a rock need for its freedom? Nothing. It's inanimate. What about vegetation? Plants, grass, what do they need?
Room.
Water, sun, what? Room. Grass needs room. Does grass need more room than the room for the blade? They need water. They need sunshine. They need good soil. But they don't need to move around. No blade of grass said, ooh, please, could you move me to the next door neighbor today? I need to go there. You give him whatever sustenance the grass or the bush or the tree needs, and get it, you're good. Now try that same theory with an animal. Try that theory of sustenance that you used for a bush or for a plant on a cow. You think the cow is going to be happy just because you gave it what to eat and what to drink? Of course not. He wants to move. He wants movement. He's not grass. He's not a tree. They're both living organisms, but their needs are different based on who they are. Now, if a human being acts like an animal and says, oh, I just got to roam free like a cow. That's what freedom is. I get to roam, eat, and drink, and sleep. That's freedom. Yeah, it's freedom for a cow. Not for a human being that God gifted with a heart and with a mind, with intellectual stimulation, with an intellectual ability. That's not freedom. If you have a brain and you don't use it, you're not free. You're like an animal, which means a human being acting like an animal. That's not freedom. That's like a cow acting like grass. Freedom for a human being, for all human beings, is to utilize their intellectual ability, to grow, to make choices that are good for us. And the more you grow and the more scholarly you become and the more you delve into the meaning of life, now you're living up to what it means to be a human being, not an animal, not a blade of grass, and not a rock or a fountain of water. So freedom isn't the cockamamie American idea of freedom, which means no one's oppressing me. That's a good start, because it's very hard to do anything when someone's oppressing you. So that's why we left Egypt. But when God says in Deuteronomy, "Lakachas legoy mikerev goy," that He took us one nation from amidst another nation, He freed us from living our lives guided by another nation and how they do their things. But all Americans do sports. But all Americans drink a six-pack every night. But all Americans have 900 channels of TV. But all Americans have to take off their yarmulke for the national anthem. You know how many dirty looks I've gotten over the years? So what I do is I make sure now if I go to a rodeo once every couple of years, I bring a baseball cap. Why? So when they take off their hats for the anthem, I can take off my baseball cap and put it by my heart and leave my yarmulke on. But my point is, everyone does it. So it became a Torah Misinai. It's straight from Sinai because the founding fathers, or because the pilgrims, or because whatever, President Eisenhower, President Roosevelt Wilson made up some minhag, made a custom, and now we have to bow to it. We love America. We love this country, and it's important to say that because we live in a time now where there's deranged individuals walking around the streets screaming in our country, death to America. And we are not that. We love America. As Jews, we are grateful for the incredible bracha, the incredible blessing that is the United States of America, and the freedom from oppression and religious oppression that it gifted the Jews in America. But it's not enough to be free from an oppressor. You need to be free to your core, freedom for your soul. And freedom for your soul is when you get to be in sync with who you are at your core, which is a Jew. The famous analogy, where did I just share this? Oh, I think I shared it Shabbos at my sermon. Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva, the 2nd century sage of the Talmudic sage who lived under the Roman Empire. He was actually persecuted by them, but Rabbi Akiva was teaching Torah when the Romans decreed that you're not allowed to. And some guy said to him, Rabbi Akiva, if you get caught, they're going to kill you. Why are you doing it? And he gave them the analogy, the parable of a fish in water. That the fox came up to the fox, one of the wisest animals, comes up to the seaside, comes up along the water and says to the fish, come. There's fishermen trying to get you out of the water. They're going to catch you with their net. Come out of the water, I'll protect you. The fish says to the fox, you they call the smartest of all animals. If I come out to you on the dry land, I'm dead immediately. In the water, the nets may catch me, they may not catch me. But out of the water, I'm toast. I'm done. And the message Rabbi Akiva was saying is that if I teach Torah, if I'm in the water, which is my source of life, either the Romans will catch me or they won't. I don't know. But if I give up on the Torah and I come out of the water, I'm toast automatically, immediately. Freedom for a Jew, freedom for a Jewish soul is not just freedom from oppression. How many countries have we liberated from their oppressors that turned into anarchist monkey shows? Every country, almost every country becomes anarchy, right? Because we gave them freedom from oppressors. We never gave them freedom for anything. They were never trained of what you do when you get the freedom from an oppressor. What's the positive aspect of freedom? Positive liberty. The Torah is telling you that leaving Egypt is great. We left our oppressors. God took us out, one nation from another. But what did he take us to do? You're going to come serve God at this mountain at Sinai. You're going to get a Torah. And when you get a Torah, now you'll have real freedom. What do you mean freedom? There's 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. As Haggai told me today, he did 613 mitzvahs today. He's somewhere here, I know. There he is. It's more by 2 o'clock this afternoon. Haggai already did 613 mitzvahs. But the point is that you say to yourself, "That's freedom. That's freedom. That's liberty to give you 613 commandments." The answer is yes. God doesn't want us to do it by force. He wants us to realize that to live a meaningful life, you need to find purpose, and purpose for who you are, not purpose for someone else or another part of creation. Right? The world's divided into 4 segments, 4 categories: the inanimate, vegetation, the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, and some say even a 5th, which is the Jewish people. But let's just stick to the 4. And what's freedom for a rock is not freedom for grass, and what's freedom for grass is not freedom for cows, and what's freedom for cows is not freedom for humans. And too many humans think that they're free, even though their freedom is basically the equivalent of the freedom of a cow. They eat, they drink, they schlop, they mishlaf, they sleep, and they roam. What are you doing today? I'm going on a trip. To where? Today I'm going to Nice. Tomorrow I'm going to Portugal. From Portugal I'm going here. From there, okay, so you're roaming like a cow. Oh, and I'm going to eat in this restaurant and that. I'm going to drink this beer and that tequila and this kava and this basbach, whatever they come up with. Okay, shlof, and I have this kind of mattress, a Tempur-Pedic, a supernatural. It's amazing, like a cow. I ate, I drank, I slept, again, I ate, I slept. Same 4 things: eating, sleeping, drinking, and roaming. Eating, sleeping, drinking, roaming. And maybe that's why on the phones in Montana, you get into these areas where there's not good service and it says roaming, because most people are roaming. They're roaming. They're not living. Comes along the Torah, Pesach. So this Pesach, this Monday night, and if you need a place for the Seder wherever you are, Our Seder is overpacked. I mean, obviously, if you need a seat, we still make room for you. But wherever you are, if you're in Arizona, if you're in Idaho, wherever you may be, if you want info for a Seder, just let me know. My point is that when you're sitting at the Seder drinking the 4 cups of wine, when you're celebrating the freedom of the Jewish people and the idea that we are eternal, that no Ayatollah Khamenei and no media people that don't like the Jews, and no Bashar al-Assad, and no State Department, and no UNRWA and Shmunra in the UN. None of these Rishoyim, none of these wicked anti-Semites, Jew haters, are going to dictate the future of the Jewish people. The collective Jewish people, with Hashem's incredible infinite miracles, a lot of the miracles which have come to us through the incredible devotion of the men and women serving in the IDF. But there's no question, even with the incredible IDF, we see miracles every day. Anyone that saw what happened this past Sunday morning or Saturday night here in Bozeman with the 300 rockets coming in from Iran, sure, America's taking credit and Jordan's taking credit and Saudi Arabia, they should all give them all the credit. The one person, the one entity everyone forgot to give credit to is God. Because for all of that to clap and all of that to work, you needed a miracle. To take down 300 of those in such a short time, you needed miracles. So we're going to sit at the Seder. Everyone in our own call, we're going to sit at the Seder. We're going to celebrate the miracle of Jewish survival. We were freed from the first tyrant Pharaoh, but subsequently we were freed from every other tyrant, from Nebuchadnezzar, and from Achashverosh, and from the Spaniards, and from the pogroms and the Ukrainians, and from the communists, and from the fascists, and from the Nazis in Shimon, and from Egypt, and from Jordan, and from Iraq. Remember there was Scud missiles in 19... Does everyone remember when Saddam Hussein was going to destroy Israel? You don't remember? You don't remember the world was shuckling. The whole world was shaking that Saddam Hussein's going to shoot Scud missiles. Okay, he shot his Scud missiles. And the same thing will happen with Khamenei. But in addition to the collective survival of the Jewish people, I want you this year at the Seder to ask yourself an honest, transparent, personal question. Only you have to have the conversation. Are you free? How many of the decisions you make in your life are dictated by other forces? Because people told you, or people hinted to you that this is the right thing or the wrong thing. How many of those so-called free decisions you've made are, let's just say, different than the Torah's perspective? Which means you're choosing some other chacham over God. God says this, but this guy on the radio, or this professor at the college, this podcast exactly. Let's be honest and let's find our own inner freedom. Not freedom from oppression, freedom from being a cow, freedom from being a blade of grass, freedom from being an inanimate rock, freedom to be a Yid. And what does it mean to be a Jew? To live up to the incredible potential and ability of what it means to be a Jew in service of your Creator. Yes, is it service? 100%. Does it have a lot of rules and structure? Absolutely. Will it make you feel in sync with who you are at your core? Undeniably. So stop depriving yourself of your own heritage. Right? What does it say in those seltzer bottles? They used to say in New York at the vintage. Very good, Baruch. No deposit, no return. You want to be free? Start investing in your soul. Start investing in being a good human being. Start investing in being a Yid that follows the Torah, and allow yourself to truly be free, freedom and liberty oriented. Right? We had that song from Lee Greenwood. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Well, at least you know you're free from what? Free for what? Oh, we're going to stand there at the rodeo. We're going to wave our flag. You should. You should wave the American flag, not burn it like the Palestinian rioters at Yale and Harvard. We love our flag, but what does that flag mean to you? Does it mean that you're free because you're not in the Inquisition anymore? You don't have you're not in the Warsaw Ghetto anymore, so you're free? That's not enough. That's freedom from oppression. What about the freedom to be a Jew? and to live up to the incredible power of your soul. To be a fish in water and realize the nets may or may not get you, but out of water, I'm for sure toast. But the world don't like me. They don't like you anyhow. Get your money's worth. The world is not going to like you anyhow. They'll find some reason, right? All the people that try to become so sophisticated, like the idolaters, and then the idolaters spit them out. How many Jews are walking around America today shocked for the last 6.5 months that all the people that they thought they were their friends, enlightened, educated, spit them out in a second when they told them they showed them their true colors of what they really think about Jews, what they really think about knowledge and education. So stop worrying about what everyone else thinks. Do what's good for your soul. Be respectful, be courageous, be kind, always kind and compassionate, but don't deny yourself your own heritage. Because the only one that loses out when you deny yourself your own heritage is you. And I'll conclude, the Rebbe Marash once said, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, Reb Shmuel, he said, the only one you're not fooling God, because God knows the truth. You're not fooling other human beings, so other human beings see straight through your BS. So who are you fooling? Yourself. And he says, it's not really a novelty to fool a fool. Right? So stop fooling yourself. Stop convincing yourself the world's going to love you. Enjoy your spirituality. Celebrate it. Devote yourself to it. Free yourself with it. It's so freeing. And no matter what's going on in the world of politics, no matter what's going on in the Supreme Court, no matter what's going on in the culture, no matter what the wokeists are telling you have to believe today, what does it have to do with me? Torah Seinu, Torah Chayim. Our Torah is a Torah of life. It's a place where you quench your spiritual thirst. Stick to the Torah. There's a song, I guess I'll sing it. There's a song that back in the day when the Enlightenment movement, the Haskalah movement started in Ukraine and Germany and Poland, and they were penetrating the traditional Jewish life. We're teaching kids that, religion is archaic and, you got to be enlightened. Not the enlightenment of the Middle Ages. I'm talking about the enlightenment in the Jewish community. Mendelssohn started with Mendelssohn, but even later. So there was a song they made in Yiddish about a kid who goes, his father says, you know what, let's try the new cheder, the new school, where they are enlightened, they're not so archaic. So the kid sings this, says, Heint bin ich in cheder allein, der Rebbe hat mit mir gelernt ganz fein. Today I'm in the new cheder, in the new elementary school, and the teacher's teaching me pretty nicely. Lernt mit mir bolok, asedre ganz voil, als valaches, mit Namen Yisrael. He's teaching me the Torah portion of Bolok, which is a nice parsha, and my name is Israel. My name is Yisrael. Then he says, the teacher tells him, Herr zu Yisrael kol was ich lern mit dir. Teure mein Talmud, yarschen von mir. Listen, Yisrael, what you learn from me. Listen closely. Inherit what I'm about to tell you. Teure mein Talmud, yarschen. When you get lost in the ways of life, when you end up falling off the path. Never forget. As the Amalek Alta Torah, that the old archaic Torah is the best, is the best commodity. He's warning the student that if you ever end up in one of those enlightened cheders, remember the Torah is the best commodity. Then he goes, Dem cheder, velich gedenken. Dem cheder is by me from Gebeirung. The cheder I'll never forget. The cheder is from my childhood. When I remember, I start yearning. The cheder is by mir das Gläubungsfon. The cheder for me is like my flag of faith. A fun in Yiddish is a flag. But then he says, today I'm in a new school. I feel like the rabbi, the teacher here is not exactly my cup of tea. Then he goes, then he says, in cheder I feel like a foreign person. I feel like I don't fit in. They're pushing me around. They're bullying me. They're always screaming at me. Go back to your old school. Right? he's expressing his frustration. He thought he was going to go be in the big world of enlightenment and, he's going to fit right in. You know what? He was from such a healthy Jewish background that he didn't fit in. And they didn't even want him there. It just took him to go from the old school to the new enlightened school to realize they're not so enlightened. They're very, very narrow-minded, right? Look who are the people today that are making Jews uncomfortable on college campuses. Liberal-minded people, progressive people, woke people. And yet when it comes to the Jews, you're not invited. We're going to have we're going to have a women's march in D.C., but the Jews are not invited because we're going to support Palestine. What do you mean? It's a lesson to the Jews. Stop trying to cozy up. Celebrate Pesach. Celebrate your internal freedom. Celebrate our people's freedom, and don't allow your life to be dictated by entities that are outside of our realm, because they will make you feel like you're part of them as long as it benefits them, and then they'll spit you out like a hot potato in 3 seconds. So l'chaim. Have a wonderful Pesach. Celebrate the incredible gift, the eternal gift of being a Yid. Don't let anyone ever take that away from you. It's the best gift that God has ever given any person, which is they could be a Jew. Celebrate it. Count its blessings. Embrace it. Observe it. Collectively and individually. Because I personally believe that none of you want to live like a cow. I'm just giving you my general idea. I don't think you want to live like a cow or a lizard. I don't think you want to live like a blade of grass or a strawberry bush, right? Hi, what did you do today? Well, I did everything a strawberry bush would do. You're a human being. You're not supposed to be a strawberry bush. You're a human. And you don't want to be a rock. So get with the program. You got 5 days to get into that Pesach mode. Free yourself, get in sync with yourself, and recognize that true freedom is in sync with Almighty God. There will be no class next Wednesday night. Those that want to know why, it's the second day of Pesach. We don't do technology on Pesach. Pesach starts Monday night. So Monday night starts Pesach. So Tuesday and Wednesday are the 2 days of Yom Tov. So Yom Tov will not end in Bozeman until Wednesday night at, 9-something o'clock. So we'll not have class Wednesday night. God willing, the following week, we'll see you back here. Have a wonderful Pesach, a Zissim Pesach, a sweet Pesach, Chag, Kosher v'sameach, a happy and kosher Passover. Be inspired, be uplifted, be free. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Sei gesund. Thank you, Yaakov.